We're recording, so I'm like,
I'm so sorry.
it's okay.
All right,
We
we're
got it.
recording now. Well, I guess I should say hi.
Hello.
Hello. Uh, um, how's the cat doing?
The cat is good. He is laying in the sun right now, and Tinker is right here by my side. She will
Oh,
probably be making her entrance here pretty quick. So everybody's good, and Honey is on the mend. So thank you very much.
oh, good. Okay,
Yeah, thank you.
because I heard, yeah. Well, it's good to hear that Honey's on the mend.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so, um, yeah, I was listening to an interview from I think 2017. And you were talking about Dugway Proving Ground, which because they had had an anthrax scare way back then, and then they had one more recently, right?
They have had several, over the years, obviously, when you've got a biological and chemical weapons facility, there will be mishaps, some of which will probably never known, are known to the public. You can go back to 1968 with the Dugway sheep incident, which is quite well known. John Fuller wrote a book about that. And then also you can read recently, if you scour through things or go to the Expanding Frontiers research blog to find out about the FOIA requests that we made in the records that were released with regard to Dugway Proving Ground shipping live anthrax to different research facilities using FedEx, and they were shipped all over the world. So that was something that caused quite a bit of a scandal, obviously. And so at the end of the day, people were disciplined for that, but very fascinating to know that things like that can happen and that the proper procedures aren't put in place to protect the public or people at the proving ground.
And you also are Expanding Frontiers also posted about bird deaths in around the Salt Lake area, right? And
Yes.
so there was a major botulism outbreak there. Uh, do you think that that could possibly have been human caused?
I think that's I mean, there's so many things going on and bird flu spreading all over. We have a lot of toxins in our environment. And I know specifically, and I'm not saying that this is what caused anything that happened with Great Salt Lake or things like that, but I know that or not Dugway, excuse me, that the Division of Wildlife Resources has been utilizing drone technology to spray toxic chemicals, namely Roundup, in all over. And that has been, from what I'm understanding, has gotten into the watershed. And so there is a potential for a lot of different things, going on, whether it's, you have people poisoning wildlife, you have people spraying things, you have potential of things going on in our environment with the Great Salt Lake and the toxic waste dump that has become. There's so many things to look at, and that has been kind of a fascinating area for me as I learn more from specific people who have found animals in their yard that have apparently died of some sort of poisoning. That's a fascinating topic and alarming, to me. But we work on a lot of things at Expanding Frontiers, so
Sorry about that. I was just
okay.
trying to stop the Discord notifications from getting picked up on my mic. I hope there's not too much noise on my end, and I
No, not at
apologize.
all.
Okay, cool. So something that's really interesting to me is that's always been fascinating to me is nocturnal lights, and just this idea that, some I mean, I'm really into UFOs, but like, so, and one of the things that really fascinates me is nocturnal lights because there's so many different interesting things that they could be, potentially, right? So, like,
Mm-hmm.
you have the will-o'-the-wisps, and that kind of thing, which sometimes has to do with like supernatural folklore, but it could also be like, you know, a particular kind of like cold flame that grows in swamps, and also like ball lightning and atmospheric plasmas, I think are really fascinating.
Right. Yeah, it is fascinating to learn about all the things that these objects or sightings could be. And there are a lot of there's a lot of, as you mentioned, folklore that we see in specific areas. Marfa, Texas was, as allegedly a hotbed for these unusual lights. Norway, Hessdalen, which I've visited and talked about a lot. Brown Mountain Lights, you've got areas all over where people are claiming that they're seeing things, and over time sometimes they can be identified, and and some are still unexplainable. So it's fascinating. I've got Lightning and Auroras, my little books from Bill Corliss, and I love reading all of those, and he documented some all of these interesting types of phenomenon over the decades. It's really cool.
Yeah, I really
So
like Corliss. His stuff is great, and we've talked about that before because I shared you one of my Corliss books that I have for here, which I guess you also have. Um,
yes.
but I don't have it here right now. But yeah, so I think what's interesting too is that I read this paper a while back that basically talks about how will-o'-the-wisp might have gone extinct basically as a natural phenomenon, like an objective phenomenon in nature, and you have other sorts of things that could be like that, like there's reports of luminous birds, and a lot of birds we now know through like research and stuff that they will actually reflect light. They'll reflect moonlight and like city light and stuff like that. And um, in particular, like I know that they've done a lot of research around barn owls with that, which is really fascinating to me.
That is fascinating.
Yeah, barn owls are so cool. And but I'm not going to go into that. But I think what's interesting is that you've got these nocturnal lights that are like that could represent natural phenomena,
Hmm.
like birds um, or will-o'-the-wisps or atmospheric plasmas, but those are kind of potentially threatened by things like pollution, like light pollution, and also development, land development and how that destroys habitats, um, and things like that. And but then you also talk about these drones, right? And those are nocturnal lights, kind of in a way, too.
Yes, they are.
And yeah, so these drones in like you're talking about being used kind of for purposes of damaging the environment. I think it's kind of shocking, but not in a weird sort of high strangeness sort of way, but just I don't know. It makes me sad for our species, I guess.
It really, that the thought of having drones flying around all the time and delivering medication, which, go figure, I don't know why anybody would be dumb enough to go that route, but and just delivering your Amazon packages or things like that. I mean, it is so disruptive to wildlife. And, not to mention they're not exactly quiet. And it's just, I think we're kind of stepping into a phase that I'm not particularly excited about, especially given the surveillance technology that is associated with drone use.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of just I'm having trouble phrasing this, but what would you say like to someone who felt that like people that are really trying to promote disclosure, like Lou Elizondo, like like what would you say to someone who would argue that what Lou Elizondo has to say is worth like people's attention and the public's attention.
I would say you might need to get a little mental checkup. Uh, if you know, and it's sad. It's people don't. We're living in a society where clearly facts don't matter. And from my understanding, I've had people that are historians in the subject who have presented factual information about specific cases that Elizondo is putting forward to the public and claiming are real, so he knows better. But I think that he also understands that he can get away with it because there are thousands of people out there that don't care about facts, millions of people that don't care about facts. And if you see it on TV or if you see it on some news network, then that makes it valid. And or if you have, somebody that is claiming to have served in the military or law enforcement, people tend to believe them without even checking facts about their service. And so that's something that the whole Elizondo to the stars thing has been so interesting to watch. And it's been sad to me to see how, I mean, really coordinated, in my opinion, this effort has been, how they've, had these congressional briefings that were just a joke, you know. And like I said, it's people don't want to take the time to verify. And when you're in a subject and you're dealing with the unknown, when you're bordering on conspiracy or you've got both feet in it fully, you have to do your due diligence and check your facts, because if you don't, you're going to go down dangerous rabbit holes that won't lead to any good for you, your family, your friends. So it's just really important to check that out. But he's a clown.
Thank you.
Yes, I know that you wanted me to say that, but I know UFO Twitter will go crazy, so we just won't talk about it there. But I mean, it's true. It's sad.
It is
Come on.
true.
Do we think
Yeah.
with all the stuff going on right now in the world, now you got me going, Rachel. So here I go. With all the stuff going on in the world right now, do we really need to focus and hold up time with this UFO nonsense presented by people that have nothing of merit to say? I mean, come on. Yeah. And I feel really bad for Well, I don't feel really bad when people are clamoring on about disclosure. I mean, some of the talking heads in this movement have been clamoring about this for decades. Oh, nope, nope. It's coming around the corner. It's coming around next Sunday. It's going to be disclosure, and okay, it's just like the apocalypse is coming around the corner, coming around the mountain. And it's that never happens, but it sure is a good hook, to keep people interested in this nonsense. And let me just say one more thing. If UFOs were really here, and if Skinwalker Ranch was truly a hotbed of paranormal activity that the military was interested in, you can certainly bet we wouldn't be carting out Jeremy Corbell to make that disclosure to the world.
Thank you.
Hmm.
And I totally agree. And I think another question that I would have is that it feels like a lot of this UFO nonsense, which is to say, I don't think all UFO stuff is nonsense, but this particular domain that we were talking about, related to folks like Hal Puthoff and Richard Doty and people who are promoting like basically toxic UFO narratives, I guess maybe. It seems like the development of that also kind of runs parallel to a lot of developments in other forms of misinformation. And I mean, it's really interesting that the whole UAP sort of government thing became very mainstream in the past, since 2017. And during that same period of time, like that's sort of the Trump era, loosely. Can you speak to maybe like the social or cultural like connection between those two things? Because I mean, like Lou Elizondo and some of these other people involved are former employees of the government or of the DoD.
Yeah, so they claim, I mean, and I mean, can what they claim be backed up? That's the problem, I think. Anybody can claim they're a CIA officer, and they can claim that, they did these things and they worked on A, B, C, and D, and, at the end of the day, it's like, no, really. And this is the problem I have like with Kit Green. Great, you've got a few articles that were just articles in papers saying that you were involved with this umbrella poisoning, but that's it. Other than that, like these guys, I feel, have created a narrative about themselves and have promoted for decades this nonsense. And I'm not really quite sure where they're coming from, whether they're true believers. I don't believe they are. I don't believe this group of people really is. I think they're doing it for purposes that are unbeknownst to me, but could there be an element of grifting? Could there be an element of distributing disinformation or misinformation on behalf of an entity or a government? I have a hard time thinking they're doing this on behalf of our government, but who knows? With
Yeah.
things changing with this new regime, that could be possible. Now they're finally working for the government.
Um, what do you think about balloons? Do you have any strong balloon opinions?
About balloons, which kind?
Really any kind, but mostly I think ones that are not tethered. So, free floating balloons, basically.
Feel like surveillance, more
Um,
like.
not necessarily. I mean, yeah, I mean, surveillance balloons are interesting. Yeah. So if that's something you'd like to speak to, you
No,
certainly.
I mean, I think we've seen some interesting news stories about balloons flying over surveillance balloons, which I think have been, that's been a long game there, but
Yeah.
that's so specifically like what's like when you're talking about balloons, like where are you going? And I'll go there with you.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess it's hard for me to say because I kind of wanted to just be like general to see like if you had any balloon takes because I've been like reading about them and just kind of researching them in my own weird way for a while.
Interesting. Okay, well,
Um,
you're going to have to let me know what's happening in the balloon research. I haven't really, other than, back in the day when I was with MUFON, as state director, we were looking at Chinese lanterns and different types of things that could be mistaken for nocturnal lights or UFOs and things like that. Or, there was a daylight sighting here back in, I think it was 2014, and there were witness accounts. It was during the day, and there were people all over the Salt Lake Valley that saw 5 to 7 objects that were, by some accounts, just hovering in place over the valley for quite a period of time. Air traffic was stopped in this particular area, which was a flight corridor for the Salt Lake International Airport. People reported seeing military jets in the area following the objects. And then the next day, and interesting, they were also flying over, we've got the NSA complex here, the data complex and military installations. And so those things were cruising right along. The next day, there was a reporter, Matt Renew, over in Colorado, who did a really great story about what people were seeing there. He got witnesses that were in law enforcement, witnesses that were videotaping and seeing the same types of objects that were hovering, in place, and then were accompanied by military aircraft. And so that was a fun case to work on. I was told by people in MUFON, which was very interesting to me, because here you've got a mass daytime sighting of unknown objects, and the higher ups, no, 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 they're Google loon balloons. And when you start, I did a lot of calling to the FAA, figuring out where the Google loon balloons were flying at that time, and that there were no Google loon balloons flying over Salt Lake. So it was funny to me that they were so easy to jump to that narrative when they couldn't even point to specific information to back up that claim. It was just really interesting. But at
Okay.
the end of the day, I do believe that was some type of surveillance.
Yeah. So maybe like surveillance drones or like something like that.
Hmm.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah.
That's my balloon story.
It's a good one.
Thanks.
Yeah, Chinese lanterns are really interesting too. I feel what I've found generally speaking is that balloons are generally bad news, like for the environment. Um, and but I think that people really love balloons too, and there's a really strong culture around balloons, especially like in Latin America, but all over. And people have really useful uses for balloons, but it's just that they're so dangerous. They're very bad for the environment. Mylar is, well, I think, Mylar will cause power outages and explosions of, like electrical equipment and stuff like that fairly commonly because it has this metal lining. And Mylar also turns into microplastics and latex, was touted for a long time as being really environmentally like, friendly because it naturally breaks down, but that's not really how it works because latex is like, it's doped with other materials to make it look a certain way and stuff like that. But, you know, you know, it pretty consistently when people do like studies with how latex compost, it doesn't really break down that fast in soil or in water. And I guess like when latex falls in water, so basically like a latex balloon will rise and then it'll explode and it'll kind of turn into like something called a balloon jelly because it'll have, breaks apart into these little tendrils. So it kind of looks like a jellyfish or like an octopus or something. And it drifts in the water and then animals eat it and animals will die from eating the latex balloons or other litter as well. Balloons are just another type of litter that does that kind of thing. And yeah, I mean, they're also really dangerous for young children. Like there are all sorts of reports of children swallowing latex balloons and dying because of that in really horrible ways. And yeah, so um, that's the main thing that I've come across in my research is that
Well, you know what? I mean,
really bad.
sometimes we go down these holes and you just never know. I mean, and it's interesting that you mentioned that because I don't see a lot of people with balloons lately, but maybe I need to pay more attention. I don't know. Because I know that this is Utah and we are all about, balloons and parties and babies and things. That was a very deep thought right there.
No, I imagine it's true. I'm sure that I've run across some Utah like news stories about like balloon releases and stuff like that. Um,
Now you've given me something new to like YouTube tonight. Got to get off that magnet fishing kick.
magnet fishing.
Don't don't go down the magnet fishing rabbit hole. Whatever you
Okay.
do. Maybe just like for a day. It's kind of fun. They use big magnets and they pull up all sorts of things, firearms and safes and
Oh, I have heard of that. Yeah,
yeah,
they
I
talked about that on Criminal, the podcast Criminal. Have you watched or listened to that?
no.
I think you'd really like it. It's really good. It's a
Okay,
few
I'll have to watch
fish.
it. Clearly I go down interesting. I like to that was kind of fun. Just for one night. What can I say?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. 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 They did an episode about that, or it might have been like an anthology thing or something like that. But it sounds interesting. I'll have to check it out sometime.
Cool, cool. Well, maybe not, but
Yeah, it's like people just throw stuff in the water. I think that's so crazy.
we do a lot of things, yeah, we're not very kind to the environment, but it's always that's where and I'm afraid it's going to get worse, but that's okay.
Yeah, yeah. sadly. So is that Tinker there?
Hmm.
Okay.
Yes. Little tinker. She's Honey's over here. So I kind
Cool.
of feel like Linda Mountain Howe with the cats, but but not.
But not, unfortunately.
Hmm. Truly.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't really have any more like questions or things that are popping to my mind at the moment.
We could talk about like Skinwalker Ranch. We could talk about MUFON. We could talk about chauvinism in the subject.
Yeah, do you want to talk about more about your experience as a woman, being around UFOs?
Or the culture, the UFO community. Yeah, I definitely the UFO community is. I mean, there are a lot of people that are not 70-year-old white men that are becoming involved, but typically it's been a male dominated subject, and it is very. I've I've never really seen such a group of people that are so misogynistic and so racist. I've been, especially as a woman trying to do my work archiving and trying to you give everybody, I'm the type of person that will give people respect. This is one great lesson I've learned, that I will respect people when they don't deserve it. And for me, I feel that a lot of the people, not all, because I've got some very dear friends, but some of the old guard are really have some issues with their sexism and not wanting to include women. I feel that that's a hindrance, but that they also, this core group of people, they have a vested interest in making sure that the UFO narrative is promoted. And I believe that they have a vested interest in making sure that information that could be damaging to the subject or a person's reputation who has studied the subject, that they want to keep that behind the scenes. They want to keep that out of the spotlight, which is really a disservice to the subject, to history, because we should have all of that information, not just silo specific bits of information and then put forward, oh, this is a UFO right here. Well, who was the investigator? What were his lead? Like, I mean, there's so many things that need to be put forward. And so I've lost over the years a lot of respect for some of the older guard. Um, and and I also have been treated, I mean, women don't deserve to be treated like women are being treated in this subject. And I could name names, but I don't think I need to. But well, I will tell you one little story here. Um, I had mentioned after I left MUFON, because there were some things going on with MUFON, and MUFON as a whole is not a very ethical organization. There are good people involved, but the leadership lacks integrity, and they don't, come to people's aid when they've been involved in harassment or things like that. And so I did an interview with George Knapp on Coast to Coast and had spoken about my time in MUFON, and that I believed that we needed to have more consistency when it comes to enforcing ethical behavior and proper legal treatment of um, people in this topic. I mean, some of these things were bordering on sexual harassment, which are unacceptable for anybody. And I was told by Jimmy Church at a conference I was speaking at that I'd never get back on Coast to Coast because I dared to bring up the sexual harassment and things and problems in the UFO topic. And I was also told by another woman, when I was trying to get people together and try to kind of create a safe environment and talk about some of these things that were happening. I mean, I was told by her that nope, we don't need to have any of this negativity. And it's like, do any of you guys want to make this topic better? Do you want to, I mean, create a safe space for people who are coming in and, and taking a chance on coming forward with their sighting or really want to research the subject. I mean, is this the way that we're going to behave? And as a result of this kind of behavior by some of the older people in the subject or some of the current people that are in the spotlight, the subject is really tainted. And I think that loses a lot of credibility, when that kind of nonsense goes on. So those are my those are my opinions. And it's shameful. And like I said, the old guard and their archiving and keeping people out of specific things and pushing information into one place, one really takes that is a very questionable to me. So.
Yeah, I don't have personal experience with this kind of stuff, so it's really, your perspective is incredibly valuable as someone who's just really been around the scene for a long time. But what it reminds me of a lot is, you know, and yeah, I think we've talked about some of this stuff before in the previous interviews that we did, but like it that sort of culture reminds me of a lot of sort of criticisms of Mormon culture, that I would raise and that I've heard other people raise as well, of this kind of, you know, protecting toxic behavior, not because of the behavior per se, but because they have to like protect the organization kind of, and the organization is so sacred that, it doesn't really matter if some people are just treated like crap all the time or completely excluded.
No, I think that sums it up. I mean, that's really true. And you do have organizations or churches, which is an organization that was special, but, who do protect their own and they kind of, wrap themselves around people that are being accused of things that are not very good. But if you have a nonprofit, especially, or if you are claiming to be this person of integrity, this great researcher and archivist and things, and you're behaving in these types of ways. I mean, I think, the old guard, some of the old guard has done a lot of damage to the integrity of the subject. And I will just say that, with regard to things that I've talked about, Jack's talked about, Jack Brewer, my partner at Expanding Frontiers Research, he, we've, we learned about and I learned about this from Barry Greenwood, who is also involved in Expanding Frontiers Research, but the NICAP list was sold not once but twice to a Nazi. And so there were all sorts of things that were involved in historically in the subject where people and groups were kind of entering in the back door and getting information about other people. And yet nobody really thought to step up and talk about this. And I think that's really, that how can you expect again to have the subject taken seriously? And how can you expect that? I mean, you should be talking about things like this. If this is happening, that needs to be known.
Mhm.
And so, like I said, the old guard, some of the old guard has really slept on the job here. And I think at the end of the day, like I said, they just want to prove that UFOs are real. And so they'll do what they need to do to make sure that that happens, even if that means hiding other evidence. So.
Yeah, and it feels to me like there's this real breakdown of secularism in cultures like around NICAP and MUFON and stuff like that, because you have on the one hand like people involved in the intelligence community that are really, that play these really important roles within UFO organizations, and or you'll have on, more recently, like especially like people who are in government or who are around government trying to, basically make this. UFO narrative like an official thing, like it's a part of secular reality, basically. So it's like you've got this sort of basically a religious movement, that's not claiming to be a religious movement, getting all involved in government and also though that this, you know, there's always been this kind of history like in NICAP and stuff like that, especially where a lot of government people would use the UFO community for their own purposes. I don't know. Well,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah,
What would
whether,
you, I'm
oh,
sorry.
sorry, go ahead.
Okay. I guess what would you say about like the sort of, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to ask is what do you think that we should do as a society to like uh, to deal with that, or do you have any ideas around that?
I think, with regard to like the UFO kind of conspiracy culture that's overtaken our government right now, that boy, I would say we need to get a grip like probably 10 years ago, 15 years ago. But it, again, this is us not educating ourselves on misinformation and disinformation, or learning how to think critically, like we always try to talk about and empower people to do at EFR. But also understanding and learning about foreign influence campaigns and the types of things that they are putting forward and seeding into our community, that and their people are buying it hook, line, and sinker, whether it's a book ban, whether it is the UFOs are here, and all of these conspiracy theories, satanic, QAnon kind of stuff. I mean, we really have, especially in America, have really lost our mooring. And I will say that our government should have done a better job at educating the public. We should have had better education in school, like they do in a lot of Eastern European countries. People know how to disseminate disinformation, and we don't do that here. We we go down, those dangerous paths. And so I hope that we can. I fear that it's going to be harder to access information, to educate us on these topics, but that's something that we really need to look at and understand that there's a small picture like with the UFO community where you have grifters, you have people that are good human beings that truly believe that they saw something, and I'm not going to discount what anybody else believes that they saw. But and then you've got the bigger picture where you are seeding things into a group of people, and along with the UFO topic over the decades, which you can go back. I've got, how many 2000 magazines, periodicals here. You can go back and UFO magazine, for example, decade after decade, they're talking about FEMA camps. They're going to round us up. They're talking about laser, space lasers and all of these things that are now completely, people are taking, well, the FEMA camps, I'm definitely worrying about that. But, I mean, I think we've allowed this to kind of seep into what we believe through the UFO backdoor, the UFO conspiracy backdoor. And I think that's been dangerous. And people that should have known better didn't take this seriously and didn't really kind of monitor or look at the disinformation and misinformation promoted by characters in the UFO field that could have more nefarious purposes. But it's just we've got to educate ourselves.
Yeah.
And also too, and I've said this before, I know, um, we've talked about this many times, but don't, if somebody's coming to you under a pseudonym and they're not willing to be forthright about their identity, then you shouldn't be dealing with that person, in my opinion. I know that there are people that want to protect their online identity for safety reasons, and I understand that, but when you're dealing with somebody who is promoting specific things or encouraging you to go to websites or download specific things, I think we need to do a little bit better job and ask questions and make sure that we're safe. Um, Not only our computers and things, but gotta pay attention.
Yeah. So, I feel like MUFON is kind of like in terms of being an organization that is like capable of actually providing any sort of real research or insight into the UFO topic is kind of a dead end, personally. But like if like to listeners out there who could potentially right be um interested in trying to start their own UFO organization, like their own UFO club or something like that, or a research group or something like that, what would your advice be to them, like in terms of like how to um what would be a good way of going about doing that, I guess maybe.
I really have to say that I think Paul Carr, who has an organization. I'll send you the link and you can provide it in maybe show notes. But he does really great work at studying and researching specific sightings. And so I really think that he is somebody, if you wanted to get involved and have take guidance from, that is actively doing that now. If people want to, I love, and sometimes because I've seen so many things, over the years, I have become rather, I just am a little not jaded, but I see the reality of things, and so I've lost that spark in me when I first started in this, where it was like I loved, and I still do. Anyway, thank you for going through this with me here. But I love learning about different types of. I love learning about the flight corridor for the international airport. I like learning about what type of aircraft is flying. I love learning about what goes on at Hill Air Force Base, and that's such a great Hill Air Force Base has such a big history. I love learning astronomy. And I love, this subject has really empowered me to learn about a lot of things that I might not have had I not gone into this. And so, just if you want to start, looking into this, I mean, learn about astronomy and learn about all of these things. And don't get tied up in a UFO group that wants to take your money and get you to the barbecue and then talk to you about angels and demons and all the blonde-haired, blue-eyed, benevolent space brothers that are coming to save the earth. I mean, just do your due diligence, and if something sounds off, then go with it because chances are, it is. So.
Cool, thank you. Wow.
You're like, oh dear, I'm going to be cutting that whole thing out of the show.
No, not at all.
Just kidding.
um Yeah, no, you're you're doing a wonderful job as always. If I cut something out, it's not because of you. It's just because it might not
Oh,
be
Maggie,
the best
absolutely.
thing to include in the for whatever practical reasons. Um, but yeah, no, I think what you're saying is very insightful. I don't know. What else would you like to talk about?
I just definitely, would love to end on encouraging people to look at expandingfrontiersresearch.org and looking at the wonderful work that we've done. Gosh, it's almost been 3 years. And Jack Brewer, as I was mentioning, has been my partner and colleague and has been just incredible at he's done FOIA requests and records requests for many, many years and has done things over the years, starting with the UFO Trail blogspot. And you can go back and look at that and just learn a lot about the subject, the characters in the subject, and all sorts of disclosures from the government after these records requests have been completed. I love working with EFR, and we definitely have gone, we're expanding what we're looking into. For me, feel that looking into environmental activism is important, especially living here in Utah, where There are only a handful of people that are actively doing that when we have a lake bed that's drying up and creating all this toxic air that we're breathing on a daily basis. We love to go down look at the intelligence community decade after decade and look at different aspects of what they've been doing potentially in different subjects, specifically the UFO topic. And again, Jack has done great work with that. I love the work that we did, the expose on Skinwalker Ranch and Phenomicon. That was great. So I encourage people to go to Expanding Frontiers and check out our work. And then, I'm getting back to my show. I've taken a little hiatus for a while because after 10 years, and doing it on a every Friday basis for quite some time, I needed to step back. But I will be, I think probably the next month, we're going to start getting back to the regular shows, and we've got some good guests lined up. So, look out for that because I may be resting for a bit, but you gotta, I'm still doing things behind the scenes.
Yes, and yeah, I think I would definitely say that is great advice. I totally endorse all of this. Um, yeah, and because you do great interviews, and Expanding Frontiers also does a bunch of great. I don't want to call it content, but great videos on YouTube, wonderful videos on YouTube, and
Thank you.
you just recently did a series of videos on like basically thinking critically about
Yes,
the
learning to
internet.
learn. Yep. And Jack did an exceptional job, interviewing people that, I really respect that have insightful information. And again, take a half a day or take 15 minutes and just start watching some of the videos that we put out because it does empower you. And I love that. So thank you for mentioning
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. Yeah, and it's not like your blog is just like, a promotional site or something. It's actually it's a repository of research, and it's a great resource for someone who's trying to learn how to do better research as well. And yeah, I mean, can you just talk a little bit about FOIA and GRAMA and those types of requesting of public records and why they're so valuable?
They're valuable because it's our tool, it's a citizen's tool to hold people accountable and to make sure that government is transparent with us. I know that I've used it here for numerous things in Utah, and it's with the FOIA, I mean, I've done FOIAs over the years for many different things as Jack. And so when is something that you feel like that there should be more information that the government is providing, you have the access to do it, or you have the ability to do it locally. That's the grammar process here, which has just been turned on its ear thanks to our government, who does not believe in transparency. So we're going to see how obtaining anything goes from here on out. But and with FOIA as well, Jack and I have talked a lot about what a kind of a perilous time we're living in right now because of the fact that so many things are being shut down, so many government agencies are being shuttered, and so how will we have that ability to do a records request with the government to get information that we're entitled to as tax-paying citizens? And so if you really want to understand the process and how to submit a good request, because there are specific ways you need to go about it to make sure that you're getting the information that you need. It can be a little bit tricky. Again, go to visit our website and check out the FOIA videos to learn how to do that. It is interesting too that each time you do a records request, even here in Utah, you get different responses from different agencies. And it's not a, it's a it can be a little bit tricky to navigate unless you have somebody there helping you learn about how to word things and how to make specific requests, or if you get a denial, how to appeal that denial and whittle things down until you're getting information. It can be a very long process. I know Jack is still waiting. He's been waiting years for certain records, but we have, we're building, we have a database online where you can access some of our things, and we're actively talking about expanding that database to make sure that we have everything available publicly online.
Cool. Yeah, I I think the work that you do is really valuable, and I
Thank
wish
you.
that there were more. I wish there were more organizations like yours.
Thank you. Well, you know what? I mean, I think I've heard you talk about some great things. And I know that there are people that want to continue this work or to start their own organizations in regional areas. And so I just encourage people to do that. And, Jack and I are always here to help and lend guidance to people that need some help in that regard. So always reach out to us.
Yeah, and I think from my own experience, you and Jack have both been always really friendly and supportive, and I don't know, I'm really grateful that you've been so supportive.
Thank you. Well, I enjoy talking with you, and I really am glad that we've hooked up, we've crossed paths, and I'm really excited for the work that you're doing. And I can't wait to see some of your shows coming up. So
Thank
thank you
you.
for all you do. And thanks for your support.
Mhm. Well, hopefully we'll have another show soon.
Yes, we will. And I'll get you back on my show, and we'll just, it'll be fun.
That'd be
But
cool.
keep up your good work. And, I love the way that you think about things, and I love the way that you also stand up and call things out when you feel areas need to be addressed. That's good, and we should all be doing more of that. So thank you.
Thanks, Erica. I really appreciate that. I couldn't help but notice that you have a nerd box on your shelf. Not sure if I'm
I was
aware.
wondering if you were going to ask about that. So when I used to go out and do my little investigations, I'd have some equipment. Oh
Oh,
dear, excuse me. Tinker took a digger there.
oh, I'm
Oh
sorry.
dear. Anyway, sorry about that. But yeah, I used to have some equipment in there that I just like because it is my big nerd box. I just thought I might as well just put that on there, and it makes me laugh every time I see it. So
Is that from your MUFON days?
that is for my move on days.
Well, nice.
Yep. Good times.
That's awesome.